Well, hello everyone. It's me again. Welcome to another Saturday live stream where we do some live reading and just, hang out. If you guys have been catching the Tuesday, Thursday streams, well, I don't know how you caught the Tuesday one because there wasn't one, but I hope you guys have been enjoying it. I've got to get a little more diligent about that. I think it really is nice to sit around and write while you guys field questions at me, which is kind of fun. Let's see. Hello to Blondie and Leah. Leia, sorry. Blondie, Leia, Misbehave. Hello, Kevin. Glad you could make it. Looks like we've got a little crew tonight. Um, Everybody give a cheer for Blondie, our hardest working admin here. So, let's see. What's up? Oh, we've got the contest coming up. So if you've got your entries in for August, I'm still reading through those, but they're all looking pretty good. Trying to think. Looks like the 30th falls on next Saturday. So, probably next Saturday. Next Saturday, we will announce the winner of our contest. So that should be fun. If you want to get in on the next one, be sure to get your stories in. It's open from September 1st to September 15th. So be sure you get your stories in. I'll put it up on the channel again so that you know where. Be sure you get your information in. I'll be sure to put the information up. Be sure you get your stories to the right email address. And then we'll read some more stories and get some more winners. After we get the winner, I'll go ahead and reach out to that person. Look at you, Blondie. Thank you. What was I saying? I'll reach out to that person when they win, and we'll get all the information settled on what book you want and where you want it sent. And that's probably when I'll ship the Dollar General ones, because I've been a slug about that. Speaking of, Douglas Gage, Beyond Savings. If you'd like your own copy, they're available on Amazon. I don't have enough at the moment to do signed copies, but I'm hoping to fix that very soon. So we'll get around to that too. But for now, they're really only available on Amazon. So let me see if I can drudge up a link, and I'll get you guys a link to that. Oh, I've got it saved on my tab. Nice. I did. There you go. There we go. And that one. There you go. If you want your own copy of Douglas Gage Beyond Savings, go to that link and you should be able to order your own copy. Hopefully it'll be available on Audible soon. I've just got to get a little time to narrate it. Seems like now that I'm retired, I have less time than I did before. So, hey Osiris, good to see you. If you guys would like to join us on Discord, I think Blondie has put up a link to that. Yes, she has. Come join us on Discord. It's where we talk about cool stuff and have fellowship and community and all that jazz. So, if you'd like to come have a look, we talk pretty regularly. I try to be in there at least a couple of times a day, and if I see a lot of conversation popping off, then, I always pop my head in. I have been experiencing the joys of text to writing, or speech to writing, so I've been getting a little bit more done and relaxing a little bit more, playing some games. That way it doesn't feel like all I'm doing is writing, and I don't want to get burned out again, so it's been coming along pretty good, though. Haven't done as much writing this week as I would like to. We're trying to get my brother down here from Ohio, and we have to get him a place to stay with his family. So we've been doing some renovations on my parents' house, working on their den, so that we can get him down here. Which my parents are my parents are older, so that means I've been working on a lot of renovations. But I think we've got everything about shored up. So maybe here before long, I'll have a lot more time for writing, which would be ideal. Um, a little more time for resting too. I mean, that's the whole point of being retired, isn't it? Is to get some rest. But next week I'm going to leave myself some reminders. So tune in on the days, probably about 9 o'clock, 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning for our live streams, which have been a lot of fun. You know, we get a different group in for daytime streams than we do for these streams at night sometimes. And it's been really cool to connect with, people that you don't see as often. I really like it. Misbehave's been there. She's Blondie pops in a lot too. Leia's been there too. It's a lot of fun though. But let's see here. Set my chair up a little bit. Make sure I'm not too loud. And let's get started on these stories here. Let me adjust a little here. Alrighty. First and foremost, I think we'll start with our Wednesday story. And some of you guys are going to be pretty happy because we're going back to the black site. So, we're going to continue on with our black site story. As some of you know, the red bands and the blue bands have had their midterms. So now we're going to go on with Masha and the green bands and see what their midterm entails. Ooh. Better. Alrighty, so this is going to be green band's midterm. So I hope you enjoy. Excuse me. Masha might have just come from lunch, but her tummy was full of butterflies. She had never been so nervous in her entire life, and it all centered around this midterm. Dex had been done, but hang on. He didn't look like his midterm had gone very well. Rebecca and Gerald had talked a little bit about their own experiences, but it had been vague and not particularly helpful. Dunstan hadn't shown up at all, and no one had seen him. The other blue bands talked quietly about what might be in store, but none of them seemed to know for sure what to expect. Brian... Yeah. Brain exercises, to be sure, but it was hard to say with this place. None of them had eaten very much, and when the bell rang, they left for class amidst a flurry of quiet talk. Can't be that much different from the test we took last year, Daniel said, looking at Jenny, Brittany, and Heather. I guess so, said Heather. They hyped the test up last year at school, but it all turned out to be nothing much more than a standardized test. Yeah, piped up Jenny, looking less dour. I bet it's nothing to worry about when you get down to it. This seemed to give them hope, but not Masha. Masha had never been tested in earnest. At her school, you didn't have tests until 3rd grade, but it was a little different in the kindergarten. In the kindergarten, it seemed like tests were whenever the adults decided they needed to test. Allergies are acting up. Some of the older kids just thought this was business as usual, but not Masha. She felt like she might be about to shake off her chair as Mrs. Cashmere came in and smiled at all of them. Masha liked Mrs. Cashmere. She was always smiling and telling them to do their best, and it reminded her of her kindergarten teacher back at regular school. What had her name been? Masha tried to remember, but it kept slipping. Miss Honey, Miss Honeywell, Mrs. Hunter. Masha pushed it out again. It didn't matter. What mattered was getting through this midterm alive. Good morning, class. Now that we've had our lunch, it's time for our midterms. As if on cue, the door opened, and 5 adults walked in. They were the ones who took the children. Masha was sure of it. They filed in like soldiers and lined up behind Mrs. Cashmere. They didn't look at anything in particular, but just stood in perfect silence as she spread her hands. If you're just joining us, we're reading the Black Site story, and we're on the Green Band's midterm, so pull up a chair. It's just starting. These are our helpers. You'll be sharing your powers with them. If you're a sender, then you will be sending them a pre-planned image, like a sandy beach or a forest at night. If you're a receiver, then you will be pulling an image from their mind that we have told them to think about. At the end of class, we will assess your abilities based on your... Hold on a second. Gotta silence my phone. Based on... Okay, that's... Based on the progress you've made. Many of the students seemed to ease noticeably, and Mrs. Cashmere laughed at their elated faces. What did you think midterm was going to entail? This isn't Hogwarts. No one is going to ask you to fight a dragon. That got some chuckles from the students, and as the adults, the snatchers, Masha thought, paired off with the kids, there seemed to be some kind of problem with the one assigned to Masha. The woman blinked and turned to speak quietly with the teacher. The two had a soft but heated discussion, and finally the woman took a seat. She was dark-skinned, Indian maybe, and her hair was wound into a tight braid that fell down her back. Hello, she said, smiling warmly. I'll be your tester today. Are you a sender or a receiver? Masha suspected she was both, but she'd been designated as a sender, and she told her so. The woman was smiling, but Masha could see the sweat creeping down her neck. She was nervous, but Masha wasn't sure why. Masha was just a little girl. Why would this woman be scared of her? It didn't make sense, but Masha thought that she could find out. Very well, here, she said, offering her a card. Take one and beam the image into my head. Her hands shook as she offered them, and Masha took one from the middle and read it to herself. A beach, just before a thunderstorm. Masha nodded, closing her eyes and beaming the thoughts into the woman's mind. The hardest part of this was not smiling as she sent and received. Masha was sending the woman exactly what she wanted. A seaside with a thunderstorm back in the background. The clouds were rolling in. The waves were crashing on the sand. And she had placed the woman on the shore as she lay on a blanket and watched it all happen. If she wanted to get fancy, Masha could even simulate raindrops on her skin when the rain came in. The sand would grit under her hand. She could hear the seagulls as they wheeled through the rough sky. But all of it was little more than an illusion. As the woman watched the waves and... There you go. Hey, Zeronin, good to see you. Got to do a little bit of sneaky editing here. As the woman watched the waves and the clouds, Masha rifled through her memories. Rifled through her memories. The woman's name was Anna. She was 28 years old, a college graduate, and she was swimming in debt. Normally, the Air Force would have covered her schooling when she got out, but she'd been dishonorably discharged because one of her commanding officers had laid on top of her a few times and then wouldn't see her again. Masha wasn't sure what that meant, but it was probably one of those things that adults did that just didn't make a lot of sense. When Anna was trying to steal money from him... Damn it, I skipped a line. Let's try that one again. When Anna had threatened to tell her higher-ups about the affair, he had acted first. He had told people she was trying to steal money from him. That wasn't exactly it, but it was something like that. Whatever it was, they had thrown her out of the Air Force over it. She'd been discharged and decided to go to college instead. She found it hard to get work, and her degree didn't mean much once she had. That's how she had fallen in with these people. They paid big bucks to grab kids off the sidewalk and out of their houses. She looked nice, kind of like one of the princesses in a Disney cartoon. But she wasn't. She stole kids. She hurt people. She... Stop, Anna whispered, but Masha ignored her. If you're just joining us, we're reading the new Blacksite story. It's the third part of the midterm, so pull up a chair. It's just getting good. She kept going. She made sure to bring the rain in to distract the woman from her rifling, but she knew she could feel it. Masha had done it before, but she'd never been this deliberate. She saw that the woman was afraid of her. Many of them were. The Snatchers and the Minders. They believed that Chandra had been attacked by her in her sleep, and that she had given the other girl a brain aneurysm. She saw that Chandra was dead, but it hadn't been her who'd done it. Masha saw something else, but the woman's mind recoiled with the information, covering it like a mother might her baby. Masha saw something else. Meh. Masha pushed, but nothing she did could get her the information. Masha? That was Mrs. Cashmere. Masha, sweetie, what are you doing? Sandy beach, rain, 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 rain. The woman Masha was supposed to be sending to was repeating the words again and again. Masha had seen too much, and now the lady might be broken. She was going to be in trouble, but not as much trouble if she could fix it. Masha went in and tried to fix what she'd done, but it was no use. The woman's head was a mess of wires and circuits. At least, that was how it appeared to Masha. And when she tried to fix it, there was a lot of smoke and sparks. Masha pushed harder, trying to repair the damage, but it was done and over with. The harder she pushed at the woman, the worse it got. And she finally pulled back to herself as Mrs. Cashmere began trying to get her out. Masha, Masha, come back, honey. Masha opened her eyes and saw that it was worse than she suspected. The woman was rocking back and forth, humming as she did so, and there were twin trickles of blood coming from her ears. Her eyes looked far and away, and Masha suddenly thought that college debt might be the least of her worries. Beach, beach, peachy beach, beach, rain, rain, go away, come again another day, she sang, as she rocked back and forth like a teeter-totter. Mrs. Cashmere gently took the prompt from Masha's hand, and the girl was surprised to see she was smiling when she looked up at her. Very good, Masha. It appears you have successfully sent the image. You have passed the midterm. Go ahead and take the day off if you want. But I... And then Masha waved her hands at the woman as if to say, Look what I did. How can this be passing? Oh, it happens. You wouldn't be the first student to accidentally warp someone beyond repair. But for the finals, you will lose points for damaging your vessel. You can go ahead and leave. It's okay. Masha got shakily to her feet, but one look at her friends was enough to show her that she had done more than pass the midterm. Her friends didn't smile or give her thumbs up, and many of them seemed afraid to look at her. Masha didn't think there would be many of them at dinner, and fewer of them would join her table for breakfast. Masha may have passed the midterm, but she had failed something a lot more important. It smells like somebody's cooking something in there. That's your black site story for the week. That should be the end of midterms, too, so maybe next week we'll get some. Maybe next time we'll get something a little different. Hey, Lou, good to see you. It's always good to be able to hear something live, Zerone, and you are correct. Oh, first coat of paint. Nice. Hopefully the rain doesn't roll in. Sounds like it's thinking about it over here. Hopefully it'll stay a little drier over there. Let's see. I think maybe we'll move on to our Cashmere story for the week. That should be fun. We'll be returning to a couple of familiar characters this week, so I think you guys will like it. Alrighty. This one's called Walking Amongst the Tombs, and it's our Cashmere story for the week, so I hope you guys enjoy it. Earl looked up from his lunch and smiled. Right on time, as usual. He opened the door to his little one-bedroom shed and found Candace standing... Nah. I didn't line it up. Standing there with a coffee for her and a latte for him. He could smell the cold foam from here, and it made him grin as she held it out to him. Cold foam, just the way you like it. I also found that Daryl Childers novel you were looking for, she said, taking the paperback out from under her arm. Earl was surprised. If I could read, right? Earl was surprised, but pleasantly so. He'd been looking for this book for almost a week, and the fact that she had found it so easily had really surprised him. Online, it was going for $70 to $80 a copy, but he doubted she had paid that much for it. Having a friend who owned a second-hand store definitely had its benefits. That's amazing. What do I owe you? He asked, as he reached out to take the coffee and the book. Oh, don't worry about it, Candace said, as she took a sip of her coffee. It's just something I had lying around the shop. There we go. Earl left the book inside and the two of them took a stroll around the graveyard as they talked about whatever they wanted to. This had been going on for a couple of weeks, and Earl was pleasantly surprised by their friendship and how it had blossomed. He knew others would look at it and think something else was going on, but Earl felt secure in the idea that both of them were just friends. He would not have any problem dating someone like Candace, but he couldn't imagine what she would see in someone like him. Earl was just the gravekeeper, and Candace was a sophisticated woman who dealt in antiques and other such things. The fact that she was willing to be friends with him was more than enough for Earl. "Hey there, Earl." Meh. I gotta do a voice for that one. "Hey there, Earl. See, your lady is back." Earl smiled and gave a covert nod to Mr. Abernathy as Candace told him about the older couple that had come in looking for an antique armoire the week before. "Thank you, CLC. Always appreciated. Never expected, but always appreciated." Oh, yeah. I agree with you, Blondie. He's becoming one of my favorite characters. I think we're definitely going to see more of him. Thanks for the super chat, CLC. Much, much appreciated. If you guys are just joining us, we're reading our Kashmir story for the week, a walk amongst the gravestones. So pull up a chair. It's just getting good. Let's see what. The idea that she might have her own secrets in a town like Kashmir never even occurred to him. In the end, alright, it's a voice. God dang. Not my Discord, but somebody's Discord is really popping off there. In the end, they just opted for this old refurbished credenza that I had in the back since opening day. It's crazy what people want sometimes. Sounds like it, Earl agreed. I had a couple sold on a beautiful plot for their mother, but they decided on a much cheaper one with a worse view. I don't think people realize that a great view is beyond price. Candace laughed. I suppose it does make visits a lot more pleasant. Earl opened his mouth to say something, but turned it into a laugh instead. Yeah, that's true. So few come to visit, too, so every little bit helps. They were quiet for a moment as they strolled amongst the tombstones. It was nice out today. Summer was winding down, and the days were becoming less stifling. Autumn was on its way, and soon the Halloween decorations would be making a return appearance. It was Earl's favorite time of the year, but it had arrived earlier than expected. This whole year had gone by before he knew it, and soon it would be... What was the year? Earl found he couldn't remember. He supposed it didn't matter. The year would go on as it had for the years before, and if the good Lord willed it, then Earl would still be here to see the next one. He saw Mrs. Malone, the plump ghost in the corner grave, incline her head to him as he went by, and he gave her a little wave as he and Candace turned to walk the perimeter in the other direction. Skipped one there. Mrs. Malone was a woman of few words, but she seemed to approve of Earl's new interest. Most of the ghosts that resided here approved of Candace. They knew that Earl would be happier with a new friend, and they were supportive of his choice. Well, some of them were. Dang, that's a weird one. There we go. Mom. It ought to be. A few of them, like the faceless shade that hovered over the grave of Edmund Tully, said nothing. Whether they approved or not, Earl did not know, but they kept their silence, and he kept his. Sometimes that's the best way to sometimes that's the best way to do proofreading is while you're reading. It's so beautiful here, Earl. I don't know how you get any real work done. I All right. I'd do nothing but dither around the graveyard and pick flowers all day. Not in the summertime, you wouldn't, Earl said with a chuckle. In the summertime, I can barely get any work done for the heat. But I love the graveyard at all times of the year. I think that's why I was called to work here. It's not the work that calls me, but the people who are buried here. I take care of them in a lot of ways, and they take care of me. Candace gave him a strange look, like she thought he might be joking, but when he didn't laugh, she just looked away and counted the headstones. How many people are buried out here, Earl? She asked suddenly. Earl thought about it. Oh, I'd say about 300 or 400. Not as many as you might think, but then again, we don't have the land or the population for a mass burial like that. Will there be room for me when my time comes? A question like that would have been off-putting to most people. But Earl was used to dealing with questions like that and thinking about similar topics himself. He had often wondered who would bury him when his time came, who would put him in the ground when it was his turn to rest beneath the soil. There we go. Of course, but not for many years yet, I would hope. Me too, Cassandra said, but one never knows these days, do they? They stopped beside a stone bench, and Earl felt like there was something bothering her. They'd been having their morning meetups for about 2 weeks, but it was strange how quickly you could feel like you knew someone. Talking with Candace was like talking with an old friend, one of his fishing buddies, or someone he'd known from high school. And he felt sure that something was bothering her. Maybe it was something he could help with, and maybe if it wasn't, he thought talking about it might make her feel a little bit better. Cassandra, is there something bothering you? You can tell me. I won't think it's silly or laugh about it. Cassandra gave him an odd look. Oh, sorry, Leia. That is rough. If you guys are just joining us, we're reading our Kashmir story for the week, so pull up a chair. It's a good one. Like she suspected, it might be her mind. He might be reading. Hang on. Let me get back on track here. Like she suspected that he might be reading her mind. But she smiled and looked away a moment later, feeling silly. It's nothing, Earl. I wouldn't want to bother you with my problems. Earl took a seat on the bench and patted the spot next to him, encouraging her to sit. They say that the gravekeeper makes a pretty good secret keeper, too. Who else have I got to tell? Cassandra seemed to think about it quickly and then decided she might trust Earl, at least with this. She sat down next to him, settling her skirts as she did so. It'd be too cold for skirts in a few months, and she wanted to feel the sun on her legs before the snow came in and consigned her pants for the winter months. Ugh. It always misses like like something here or there. It's weird. And consigned her to pants for the winter months. There we go. I have no proof. It's not like I've seen anybody or suspect anyone, but I feel like someone is watching me. Well, you are a rather attractive young woman, Earl said as the color crept up his neck. I'm sure there's more than a few men in town. Oh my goodness, this is Let's try that one again. Text to speech is lovely, but sometimes it really drops the ball. Okay. More than a few men in town who have seen you and thought about maybe asking you out to a movie or a milkshake or something. No, Earl, not like that. I mean, I feel like someone is hunting me. I feel like when I'm out and about, there's a wolf stalking me. I know how silly that sounds, but it's the truth. Now that the store is doing a little better, I wonder if I might pick up some kind of... If I might have picked up some secret admirer or a stalker or something. That made Earl feel several different feelings. He was afraid for his new friend, of course, but he was also mad that someone would stalk Cassandra. Eh. There we go. Cassandra was such a nice girl. She thought of everyone before herself, and the idea that someone might want to hurt her or do something to her that she didn't want to do was infuriating. It made Earl want to go out right now and track this person down, the same way he might a deer or some dangerous animal in the woods during hunting season. Instead, he just gripped her hand. Gripped his hands in his lap and tried not to yell when he answered her back. That's terrible, Cassandra. Do you have any idea who it is? Maybe it's someone I can talk to and get them to leave you alone. Cassandra shook her head. No, but I don't feel like they're watching me when I'm here. I feel safe here. I feel safe with you, Earl. I like to come here and walk with you because it's one of the few times I don't feel like I'm being watched. I don't like those new cameras in town either. They make me feel weird, like it's the same person watching me through the camera, the same one who's stalking me. Earl agreed. Oh. Wow. I don't know how they got that one. That was... goodness. It had really word souped there for a minute. Okay. Earl agreed. He didn't much care for those new cameras either. He talked to the sheriff about them, but Sheriff Guthrie didn't seem to be taking them very seriously. He had thought that the sheriff might have hung them up, part of some new kind of citywide surveillance, but some of the guys down at the general store said it had been a guy in a white van in a uniform with an eagle on it. One of them thought it might be the guy who sometimes lurked around town, but they couldn't be sure. What Earl could be sure of was that he wanted to protect Cassandra. Well, you can come here any time you want. I like having you around. She leaned against him, but Earl had realized they were closer than he thought to a place he'd been avoiding. Mrs. Pearson was lying on her gravestone and looking at the sky, seemingly oblivious of them. "Thank you, Earl," Cassandra whispered, getting up and brushing off her skirt. "I'd better get back to the shop. Same time tomorrow?" "You bet," Earl said, and as Cassandra made her way to the shop, Earl headed back to his shack. Mrs. Pearson was going to love the new book. Alrighty, that's our Kashmir story for the week. Looks like things might be heating up in Kashmir, so hopefully we'll be able to see how that plays out. Let's... Alrighty, so I think maybe we'll save our Tuesday stories for last. But for Friday, we've got a brand new Kashmir Botanical Gardens story, because I realized it had been a while since I'd done one of those, and it's getting closer to the season. So I figure, might be good to have a new one of those. Oh, I didn't think about that, Blondie. Yeah, maybe we'll have a little shovel to head action there. Yeah, any of you guys that remember our last Kashmir story may remember that we all know who the eye in the sky there is. So, seems like we've got ourselves a little back and forth here that might play out later. But we're going to move on to our Kashmir Botanical Gardens story. This one's called Seasonal Plans. So, I hope you all enjoy it. Okay, we need to talk about this year's Halloween event. We were all sitting in the conference room, a room that had been cleared out and set up in the grow house, not far from our office. Not far from her office. I was there, because of course I was, and across from me was Randy, who had taken the other seat at this end of the table. I suppose I would always be security, no matter what mantle I was wearing, and the two of us were there to protect and support her, no matter what. Tobias was there, representing the growers, and so was August, who had been voted as the head of the concession committee. At the far end of the table was the Barker, who had been invited by the lady herself. This raised some eyebrows, mostly from the growers and the concession committee, But the lady had been insistent that the barker would be a large part of what they intended to do this year. With the 6 of us assembled, the lady had decided to get right to business. I like some of the things we did last year, but I don't want the community to think we're just a tricky pony, she said, and then looked at me as if for confirmation. A one-trick pony, my lady. Right. So, what can we do for Halloween this year? I had told her several times that it was only August, not even September yet, but she wanted to go ahead and get ideas together. She wanted this to be a major rebirth for the Botanical Gardens, and I thought it was a pretty good idea. We had put on a large celebration when she returned, and that was fine, but she wanted something large and grand to signal to the people that she was back, and that the grand gestures of before could begin again. The people of Kashmir would say what they wanted to about the lady, but she was generous in many ways, and she loved the town, probably more than they deserved. Well, Tobias spoke up, I think the candy forest from the year before was a big success. I've been reading a little about fairy tales in the past year or so, and I think perhaps that we could integrate one of them into this year's celebration. There's a witch in it. Hansel and Gretel, I said without thinking, and Tobias gave me a bit of a sour look at being interrupted. Precisely, thank you. We could build a witch's hut in the middle of our candy forest and scare kids when they come to see. There we go. An excellent idea. Keep me posted on other ideas, Tobias. Randy, how is the security looking for our upcoming event? Just fine, Randy said, taking out a notepad. I've actually been able to divert many of our old security detail to the growers and the concession. These new guys we got in the field are better suited for keeping the park safe. Most of them already have security experience. If the green man decides to show up again, I don't like his chances. Pretty sure a couple of them have assault rifles, and I'm almost certain I saw a Kalashnikov the other night. That's going to be a doozy to explain to the sheriff if he comes snooping around again. Do try to tell them that discretion is the better part of valor, the lady said, but she smiled as she said it and nodded at Randy as he sat back down. What can we do for refreshments? The lady asked, as she looked over at August. August had changed quite a bit in the time after he had been elected as head of concession. They had given him a toga to wear as well, and it had a yellow stripe on it that kind of reminded me of a mustard stain. Apparently, the appointment had raised his regard. Sometimes it doubles. Okay. Amongst the other Brandylow, and he was enjoying a much freer existence because of it. I think he argued with Randy once a week about why he couldn't start manufacturing alcohol or growing illicit substances. And though their arrangements... Their arguments were lusty, Randy still came out ahead most of the time. Well, we've been working on a kind of... whale. Wow, they really messed that one up. It gets the strangest idea about words sometimes. Okay, try that one again. We've been working on a kind of ale that's been very popular this time of year. Have any of you possibly heard of pumpkin spice? I stifled a chuckle, and thankfully Randy did too, but the lady looked mystified at what he was saying. Pumpkin spice? No, I don't believe I have. It sounds exotic. took everything I had, not to let August see me chuckle into the back of my hand, and I was pretty sure Randy was pinching himself under the table. Yes, well, it's very popular amongst the young people, and I think it will definitely help us get the edge we need this year. I've been putting it into coffees and even a little into the kombucha that we've been making. I was trying to turn it into an ale, he said as he shot Randy a dark look, but my efforts were sordid in that regard. Randy sighed as if this was not the first time he had had this conversation. August, I don't know how many times I've had to tell you this. The production and sale of alcohol is illegal unless we have a special license. As of yet, we have not been approved for that license, so you cannot sell alcohol at the park. August sniffed theatrically. Seems a little much. Is there any news on when we might expect to see this license? The state has a board, and the board has a process. The state has a board, and the board has a process. I've told you that, August. For now, the lady broke in, we will sell only what the magistrate has allowed us to sell. We don't need any extra attention from those that could make life difficult for us. As for snacks, I should be able to make the treats we had last year, which we can use for this year's experiments. I'd like to see some variety, however, so be prepared to submit some menus for our next meeting. August nodded and bowed a little before taking his seat again. Lastly, the barker The barker has approached me about opening a haunted house inside the park. I think it's a good idea, but I understand there are some concerns. Tobias stood up, adjusted his robe, and fixed the barker with a disdainful look. Concerns, my lady, might be an understatement. I don't think he ought to be allowed to go on doing what he is doing since time was young, especially not in our home. Aside, I sighed. This was something that had been building up for a while. Ever since we had come back from our mission to bring the lady back from the Green Man's realm, Tobias had been very outspoken about his hatred of the barker. He thought he was a spy. He thought he was biding his time so that he could feed information back to the Green Man. He thought he was planning revenge on them for what they had done to the Green Man, and several other conspiracies that he was very vocal about to anyone who would listen. Where was it? I saw it. There it is. We're reading our latest Kashmir Botanical Garden story, if you're just joining us, so pull up a chair. It's a good one. Tobias didn't want to hear any of that. He wanted the barker gone. Oh, I skipped something. Okay. Never mind that the barker had helped us find the Green Man and helped us bring back the lady. There we go. Tobias didn't want to hear any of that. He wanted the barker gone, and he wanted it done yesterday. I'd never known Tobias to be so irrational about anything, and it was beginning to grate a bit. Tobias, you've been very vocal about your concerns and distrust about the barker, but he's been nothing but kind and helpful since coming back to stay at the park. If he wants to open his haunted house, then I see no reason why he should not be allowed to. My lady, I understand that he has gained your trust somehow, but I simply cannot let bygones be bygones. This creature was responsible for your abduction, and no amount of help is going to make me look the other way while he operates with impunity inside our home. I think he should be asked to leave, and I've been very open about that fact. He had been a little too open about that fact as it happened. Tobias had been talking to August and Randy in an attempt to get them on his side, with mixed success. All of the growers and most of the concessionaires had a very narrow view of the Barker, and a lot of them losing my voice here. And a lot of it had to do with Tobias's constant tirade against him. I was willing to admit that not all his anger was baseless, but the man had been nothing but helpful since coming back, and I couldn't blame him for the sins of the past, as Tobias did. Tirade, not tirade. That's silly. I'm not saying he should be punished forever for something he may have done in haste, but what I am saying is that we need more than a few months to discern where his loyalties actually lie. The lady steepled her fingers and glowered at him. Tobias flinched a little under her unyielding gaze. I have told you again and again, Tobias, that this matter is closed. I trust the Barker. As long as I have a place here, so does he. He will... He will have the same rights as any of you. I will not put him on trial after what he did for me, and I think if Randy trusts him as well as the summer night, then you should too. I thought that might be a bit of a bold claim, but I didn't dispute it. The Barker had worked very hard over the past few months to help cleanse his reputation after the lady's kidnapping. But I still wouldn't have said that I trusted him. I accepted him and was even hoping that he would earn that trust, but trust is something that's earned, and I wasn't quite ready to give it yet. That being said, I liked the guy well enough, and was really hoping that Tobias would come around in the end. I have been patient with you, Tobias, but this ends now. I will hear no more about this, and you would do well to stop poisoning everyone else against him. He's our ally, whether you like it or not, and that's all that needs to be said on the matter. Tobias looked like he wanted to say more, but nodded and bowed as he returned to his seat and folded his arms crossly. The Barker has asked to set up a... The lady looked over at him as if trying to find the words. What is the term? A bar, my lady, though I'm thinking more of a pavilion where juice and other things could be sold. August looked like he was ready to bluster right out of his chair. We already have refreshments. I don't know why we would need... The Barker cut him off. The refreshments here are merely illusions, my good sir. Nothing they experience in the pavilion is real, but it is often how people work out the things that plague their mind. This is the service that I offer to them. I scare them, but I also help them to see the things that are hurting them. It's the service that I've always provided, a sort of apology for the nature of my powers. That seemed to take some of the bluster out of August, but it only deepened the look of mistrust on Tobias's face. Gotta take a sip. Ugh. One of these days, Duke Cannon's going to start giving me some money for using his products on air here. If you're just joining us, we're reading the Botanical Gardens story this week, so pull up a chair. Yeah, I know, Blondie. Pumpkin spice kombucha sounds a little bit weird, but I've known them to put pumpkin spice in just about everything. There we go. It will run in the guise of a haunted house, the barker went on, luring people in so they can work out their problems. A very fitting scene for the Halloween season. The lady nodded, smiling at all as she told us to be about our business. I will expect some solid plans before the next meeting. I think today, however, we are adjourned. Me. There was some chatter as everyone got up to leave, but I still kept my chair, not wanting to leave the lady's side. That had taken some getting used to in the last couple of months, not being around her. I had been the one person to spend most of my time around her since being turned, but it was as if I felt different when I was around her. Being around her was like sitting in a shaft of sunlight, like basking on a warm day, and it was just nice to be in her company. I didn't know if she felt the same. I had never really asked, but I didn't think she minded me spending so much time with her. It was probably something to do with the mantle. We had been given one each by Titania, and like often calls to like, I suppose. But some of it was just an extension of what I had already been doing when I was just a simple Brandylow. She was my lady, 5 parts mother and 5 parts love of my life, and I think most of us felt like it was an honor just to be near her. Ooh, that's a good idea. I swear, I know Grammarly's done by a lot of algorithms, but they really need to fix some of their punctuation. I do wish Tobias would let this be, she said, leaning against her fingers and looking troubled as the door closed behind them. In some ways, I get where he's coming from. It was hard for me to forgive the barker for his part in your kidnapping, too. All right. But you forgave him, the lady said. You moved on. I just don't understand why he can't. I shrugged. Sometimes people have a hard time forgiving, especially when they're hurt and someone they love has been hurt. The lady sighed and got up. I'm going to the lily pond. Sometimes creating clears my head. Do you have plans this afternoon? I shook my head. Nothing pressing. Why don't you stop by and lend me some of your power? I find that I often create better when you're around. I smiled as she walked away, thinking I just might. It was going to be an interesting season for the Botanical Garden. Alrighty, that's our Botanical Garden story tonight. Oh, they should have a pretty big part in the coming months. You know I always like to put on a lot for Halloween and Christmas with them. We really haven't talked about them much since the spring story. So I figure it's time to work them back into the general flow of things. Oh, let's see. Looks like we're down to our Tuesday stories. I feel that, Zeronin. This will be my first non-working Halloween, so it'll be nice to get to spend a lot more time with the family. I usually have to miss out on pumpkin carving or um, trips to haunted houses or trick or treating or things like that. So I'm really looking forward to getting to spend a lot of time with them. Let's see. Okay, so for our Tuesdays, for our Tuesday and Thursday story, we have to finish part 5 of The Natives of Kawakala Mall, which I kind of dropped the ball on this week. Sorry about that. So we're going to go ahead and do part 5, and then I've got another short story to come after that. So we'll go ahead and get started. To recap, our security guard has discovered that there are restless spirits in the Kawakala Mall, and they almost got him. He got chewed out by his boss and told he's not allowed to be there after 9 p.m. anymore. And then he was, I don't want to say asked out. He wasn't really asked out. A note was left in his coffee cup by Greg, the janitor, and he shares some of the history of the mall with him. And then they hear about a group of youngsters from the reservation that are going to the mall to break in and wreck the place, and he's afraid they're going to get hurt. So then they rush to the mall, and they're a little bit late, but now we're heading into the mall to see if we can't find this totem that grounds them all to the mall, and see if we can't stop some of it from happening. So that should wrap us up, and we'll go into part 5 of The Natives of Kawakala Mall. Alright. I stepped over the broken glass and was glad that I'd worn my work shoes. The glass broke loudly underfoot, and I had intended to reach back to help Greg and Terry before I caught sight of the interior. The spirits hadn't gotten to them quickly enough, it would seem, because the food court was a mess of broken glass and spilled garbage. I heard Greg whistle behind me, and I was guessing this was the worst mess he had seen in the food court. The smell was tremendous. Whatever prep had been done for the next day was now all over the floor, and mingling smells made me want to throw up. It was slippery, my shoes sliding in the muck as we tried to make our way into the mall, and Terry had to reach out and grab a post before he fell on his butt. If you've never smelled something like this, it's kind of like a dumpster full of old food left in the sun. It was made all the worse by the lingering smell of copper that permeated it, too. The sauce and the liquid ran together with the blood that was leaking from many of the protesters. Not all of them were dead, but quite a few of them were. They were laid out on tables and leaning against walls, but some of them were stiller than the living people. Meh. Try that one again. But some of them were stiller than living people should be. Terry gasped as he tried to go to a few of them, but he had to grab the post as he slipped in the mess. The floor was like a miasma of broken furniture, so one false move would send him stumbling into a soy sauce punji pit. "Go on," Greg said. "We'll try to get help. If you find Marcus, tell him to come back to the food court. We'll get the others out of here once we clear a path." I nodded, making my way carefully across the food court, as I heard them make their way to the custodian office to get some tools. It was like navigating an oil slick. I could feel my feet sliding, threatening to come out from under me, and the farther in I went, the more screaming I could hear. Someone was being attacked or murdered, and the sooner I found the totem that was anchoring the painting to the mall, the sooner I could stop all of this. The people on the floor had long slashes on them, jagged cuts that oozed like something living. As I grabbed one of the tables so I didn't bust my ass, I saw one of them creeping up on me. The mess on the floor didn't seem to slow him down, and his grin was highly predatory. He had a knife in one hand, his arms and chest bare and slashed with blood that I doubted was his own, and his feet came down quietly on the messy floor. My breath hitched a little as I watched him creep closer, my doom creeping along with him. My feet slid as I tried to get out of his line of sight. The spirit just kept coming with that horror movie slowness, and I wanted to scream as I fumbled around. I was going to die. This thing was going to kill me, and it felt like a colossal waste to have come this far to lose to a grease trap or a turned-over container of sauce. He was less than 20 feet away from me when I heard the water, and as it came frothing from behind the Chick-fil-A, I could see that someone had smashed the nozzle of a drop sink. The water became a stream and then a small river, and as it pushed the muck away, I could only see the spirit pause and take a step back. I could also see Try that one again. I could also see the spirit pause and take a step back. His smile was still in place, but now he seemed hesitant to cross the stream. "Go!" yelled Greg, and I could see a bloody kid leaning against his shoulder. "Spirits can't cross running water. Hurry up before he regroups." Nice. Good on you, Blondie. There's not a lot of kids on my road either, so we'll probably keep a little candy, but that'll be about it. And of course, pumpkins. My footing was still extremely tenuous, but I managed to get moving as the water carved a path between us. The office wasn't far, but I could see other shadows stalking me as I went. They were hurting me, moving me like a deer into a trap. Where was I? Moving me like a deer into a trap, and as the office door came into sight, I could see them getting ready to spring. There were 5 of them, their faces mostly hidden by shadow, and I could see only a slim chance of making it into the office. My shoes weren't completely dry, and it saved my life. As I scrambled for the door, my shoe slipped on the tile, and I went down on my chest as they made their move. Somehow they moved right over the top of me. It was weird, feeling them come within a hair's breadth of stabbing me to death, and as a pair of them crashed into a couple of tables, I reached for the door and threw it open. It came back together very quickly as I put my weight against it, and I started looking for something to jam under it. The 2 that jumped over me must have got back on their feet pretty quickly, because suddenly it was like a machine gun was hitting the outside of the door. Oh. I engaged the lock, but that wasn't going to last forever. Finally, I found a rickety-looking chair at the bottom of the stairs and slammed it up under the knob. It was like putting silly putty in a hole on a dam, but it was all I had. As the door bucked and thrashed, I took the stairs 2 at a time. I needed to get this totem and destroy it before the spirits got through. and put those barbaric knives to good use on my flesh. To my surprise, the office at the top of the stairs was open, and I went straight in and locked the door behind me. To my continued surprise, someone was standing at the window and looking down at the carnage. It was Mr. Martin, and he turned around with a look that said he believed his life was about to end. "What are you doing here?" he asked, stepping away from the window. "Me?" That's not the Mr. Martin voice. Hang on. "What are you?" "What are you doing here?" he asked, stepping away from the window. "Me? What are you doing here?" I shot back. "Young man, this is my office. I'm allowed to be here." "No, actually you aren't. Don't you remember? You told me that no one was allowed to be here after 9 p.m. I believe you said you would fire me if you caught me here past 9 o'clock again. So I'll reiterate. What are you doing here?" Mr. Martin looked like he wanted to get mad, looked like he wanted to blister at me on the spot, but he seemed to remember that we were standing over a powder keg and adjusted his tone accordingly. There we go. We're reading part 5 of The Natives of Kawakala Mall, if you're just joining us, so pull up a chair. I was doing paperwork, much like you were the other night, and told security they could go on home and that I would lock up at 9. When I went to lock up at 9 o'clock, I saw this group of hellions out in the parking lot and decided it might be safer to hide from the natives than fight the mob. So I locked the door and ran, hiding in my office. I assumed they would... What? That's gotta be a wreck up. I assumed they would wreck up the place and then probably get killed by the spirits, but then you had to barge in and ruin my hiding place. I was speechless. Did it not occur to you to call the police? Try that again. Did it not occur to you to call the police? Mr. Martin smiled, but it was extremely patronizing. "Oh, of course not. Why would that have occurred to me? Of course I tried to call the police. It seems that whatever these young men were planning, their council of elders tried to call the police and nip it in the bud already. However, the cops didn't take it seriously, and when I told them about the group of children trying to get into my mall, they laughed at me and hung up." I nodded. "That's what they did to me, too. So you've been hiding up here?" Mr. Martin sneered at me. "I'm not hiding. I was being smart. It appeared you had the same idea." "Hey, Bev, good to see you. You're just in time. We've still got a couple of stories to go." I was already looking around as he spoke, trying to find the totem or whatever it was I was looking for. "No, I'm actually looking for something." Mr. Martin looked up slowly. "In my office?" I sighed. I'd have to tell him. "Look, I've got some information that might stop the natives from coming back again. We have to break something that's connecting the artist's intention to the art piece. And it's something he gave you when the piece was completed." I elaborated a little, trying to make it as quick as I could, and as I laid it all out, I became aware that the thumping at the base of the stairs had stopped. That could mean they had given up, but It could also mean that they'd broken through my small barricade and were creeping up the stairs to find their quarry. I turned suddenly and locked the door, before turning back to find Mr. Martin smirking, but not at the story, to my surprise. He honestly seemed to be taking it all quite well, and I thought he might believe a lot of what I was saying. So, we need to find this totem that Cleary gave me when he finished the art piece and smash it. That's what they tell me. I don't know how, but it will supposedly sever the connection and stop the natives from coming back again. Yeah. We're reading part 5 of The Natives of Kawakala Mall, if you're just joining us. Just about done, so pull up a chair. It's getting pretty good. Mr. Martin nodded and started opening drawers on his desk. I keep it in here. Always kind of meant to make a display out of it or something. I know it's here somewhere. I just need to... The door rattled in the frame as something hit it hard enough to send dust motes falling from the ceiling tiles. I started looking for things to push against the door as it jounced again. In the end, when the filing cabinet wouldn't budge and the end table was too flimsy, I put my back against the door and did my best to hold them at bay. It felt like a small army was pressing against the metal, and I could see the frame bulging as they set their shoulders to the task. "Hurry!" I shouted, wincing as something poked through the door and pricked me. Mr. Martin was yanking the drawers out now, spilling papers and pens all over the floor. A calculator went flying, as did a bunch of paper clips, and suddenly he was out of drawers and looking pale. I was sure I put it in the desk," he breathed, looking under it like it might have fallen down. I could have told... Meh. I couldn't have told you why until right now, but it always seemed important, like something I should keep close. He crawled out from under the front of the desk, and his hair was sticking up in frantic corkscrews. The door wasn't going to last much longer at this rate, and I winced again as more than a poke hit me in the back. They were cutting through the wood now, those stone tools feeling very real as they came closer and closer to poking into me. And when I saw Mr. Martin staring at the shelf beside the filing cabinet, I hoped he had found what he was looking for. "It's here!" he half shouted, half squeaked, and lunged for it as he spilled over the... Meh. Can't talk today. And lunged for it as he spilled over the bottom 2 shelves. There it is. I saw him lift up a lumpy earthen pot about the size of a baseball, and then he brought it down with a note of finality as it shattered against the short carpet. He stomped on it for good measure, and it broke, scattering. I felt something immediate. Nah, I fucked it up. Let me fix that. And as it broke and scattered, I felt a sudden and immediate halt to the force that was trying to push its way into the room. I leaned against the door a little longer, not trusting it, but it was like the ghosts had been exorcised from the place. The air was lighter, the room less constricting, and as I eased off the door and peeked at the gap around the ill-fitting thing, I couldn't see anything lurking in the shadows. Kawakala Mall was just a mall now, and it was nice to be alone inside it. Mr. Martin collapsed on the floor of his office, breathing heavily and staring at the ceiling. And that was where Phil found both of us, a half hour later. It felt like no time to either of us, but apparently we had just been listing there in the aftermath. He got us downstairs again so the EMS could have a look at us. And then the shitstorm truly began. The aftermath of the Kawakala Mall break-in was pretty wild. 8 kids had died that night, but Marcus wasn't one of them. He had pulled a couple of his friends into a walk-in cooler at the Chinese place and barred the door, but the rest hadn't been so lucky. Even those who had escaped after vandalizing the mall hadn't gotten off so well. Kawakala Mall... Nope, I skipped a line. Even those... Whoa. Even those who had escaped had some pretty substantial injuries. They tried to sue, I heard, but they had broken in and vandalized the mall, so it didn't go real well for them. Kawakala Mall rebranded itself as Pine Meadows Mall, and Mr. Martin had a long talk with Greg and Terry about what had happened with the mural. They decided to be a little more open to community outreach, and the survivors were allowed to help clean the mall as opposed to going to jail. Mr. Martin also started a few charities with the local tribes and talked to the city council about rebranding some of their town traditions. The protests have lessened, and the general air of chaos has gone down quite a bit. Now the mall stays open late. People come in to shop, the movie theater runs all-night screenings sometimes, and Pine Meadows Mall is a community staple. At least it was until 2020 when everything kind of shut down due to COVID. The mall is bouncing back, but it's not as big or as full as it used to be. I was head of the mall security until COVID, and now I'm retired. I still go to Pine Meadows sometimes, but I still can't look at that mural without getting a shiver. The mall may be changed, but I still remember when the natives were restless and their hunting went on all night. Hang on. There we go. So if you come to Pine Meadows Mall, formerly Kawakala Mall, remember to be respectful. Who knows what other spirits might be waiting to take their turn. Slightly better ending. All right, that's The Natives of Kawakala Mall, Part 5. So, we have finished our Kawakala Mall readings. Yay! I got one more for you guys before we say so long. It's not a grandpa story, but it's about a grandpa, so I know how much you guys like those. It's called My Grandfather's Heir. So, settle in, and I hope you like it. I was inspired by a creepy TikTok short that I had watched about a weird funeral in like the 1700s. So I hope I've made it sound as creepy as it was supposed to. My grandpa was kind of a weird guy. I only knew him until I was 6, but I could just tell, even at that age, that There was something a little off about him. He lived in the family home, a semi-mansion that sat on about 30 acres of property up in East Tennessee. He would hunt out there, or so Mom said, and sometimes he would order exotic game and have it released on the property. Mom said that I had to be careful out there when I went to play in the yard on our frequent visits to Grandpa's house, because the rumors were that he didn't always catch the animals he released. The trophy room was certainly impressive, and he had heads from all sorts of things mounted on the walls. He had a stuffed grizzly bear that was bigger than I was, several exotic cats that were put in various poses, and even a bald eagle that he would hide under a curtain if anyone important came to visit. He would always wink at me and say that it was our little secret. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying. My grandpa wasn't weird around kids or anything. He kind of looked like the Monopoly guy, with a white beard and a white mustache that didn't match his bald head at all. He wore these clothes that were somewhere between a robe and a suit, and he always wore slippers, even when he was outside. He had a special pair for when he went hunting, and the gun he used was easily bigger than he was. He said it was an elephant gun, and he said that one day he'd love to hunt one of those magnificent creatures. Anyway, that's not really what you're here to hear about. Grandpa died a month before my 7th birthday. Mom said it was a stroke, and we all had to go to his house for a funeral. It wasn't a big funeral. Grandpa had lots of friends, but a lot of them they weren't allowed to attend. Mom said Grandpa knew movie stars and presidents, even dictators from other countries, and she would show me pictures of them on the wall in his gallery when we came to visit. I'd gotten excited at first, thinking I'd get to meet some of them, but Mom said it was just for family, so it would be us, my cousins, and my aunts and uncles. Mom had 2 sisters and a brother, and I had about 10 cousins between the 3 of them. They were all older than me. I was the baby of the family, but they never really mistreated me or anything. We all played together, the ones of us that were still young enough to play, and I remember being excited all over again when I realized that I'd get to see them. I hadn't seen my uncle's kids in probably 3 years, and my cousin Jamie and I both collected Pokemon cards, which I wanted to trade. Mom let me bring them, but said I'd have to leave them in the car until after the funeral. I know you want to play with your cousins, kiddo, but this really isn't that sort of event. There we go. Change up a few things there. There we go. I didn't know any better. I'd never been to a funeral before. I can tell you now, I've never been to a funeral like that either. Hang on, that doesn't. I've never been to a funeral like that one since. We arrived at about 8 in the morning, and we were the first to arrive. Mom had agreed to show up early so that she could help with the flower arranging and get the chairs set up. Of her siblings, Mom had always been the one that spent the most time with Grandpa. Mom was the one who gave the hospital his information whenever he had to go in. Mom was the one. Oof. Mom was the one who signed the papers when he had to rework the will or get medical care. And Mom was the one that the coroner had called when they found Grandpa dead. I don't think Mom was responsible for his estate or anything, but she was definitely the one who got called more than anyone else. Mom was a writer, so she was usually at home working on some novel. I never thought we were rich, but I knew that Mom didn't have to go to work like everyone else's mom did. I went to public school, I ate school lunch, and I got my clothes from the mall, just like all the other kids I knew. I knew my cousins had fancy clothes and fancy toys, but Mom made it pretty clear that I got what I earned. There had always been rumors that Grandpa had gotten Mom's first book published, but I never believed them. Mom's writing was amazing, and the others were probably just jealous. So, we came in to see Grandpa off, and then we'd return to our home and see what came after. As I said, the funeral wasn't a huge event. There were around 16 of us in all, and we were all dressed in our best suits and dresses, all of us looking at the casket that had been set up in Grandpa's dining room. Hang on. There we go. I think all of us sensed how odd it was to have a funeral in the home where we'd celebrated Christmases and New Year's and some of the most important events of our lives. There we go. Looking at that casket, I didn't think I'd ever be able to celebrate another Christmas here. Not even if Mom dragged me here kicking and screaming. It started normal enough. There were some testimonials, people saying how generous Grandpa had been and how much they would miss him. People talking about memories from times gone by, and a few of them even made toasts with the brandy that had always sat next to Grandpa's chair. My uncle was pretty tipsy when it was all said and done, and as it went on and on, I think all of us were waiting for the casket to be wheeled out so we could go have a bite to eat and head back to our homes. But the reprieve never seemed to come. We just went on talking until we were out of memories to share, and then we all sat there quietly. It was weird, looking at that lacquered coffin, but I wish I'd been allowed to go right on staring at it. The last person on the stage was Grandpa's attorney, Mr. Madreau. I had seen Mr. Madreau before. We all had, from time to time, and today he was dressed in what had to be his best suit, his wispy hair slicked back on his skull, which made him look like half a corpse himself. He cleared his throat, and we all looked up at the coffin as he unrolled a piece of paper and read aloud, "This is the last will and testament of Mr. Earl St. Clair. Mr. St. Clair has said that the matter of his inheritance has never been settled, but today he wishes to settle it for one and all. Mr. St. Clair has asked me to inform you that whoever looks away last is the heir to everything." That's not the heir I was looking for there. There we go. I remember everyone in the crowd looking extremely surprised. My uncle sat forward like he couldn't quite believe what he was hearing. He was the oldest. He had assumed that everything would go to him, but it appeared now that there was going to be something a little different. There was a lot of low mumbling throughout those assembled, and when Mr. Madreau didn't elaborate, my uncle decided to ask. "I don't understand," he said, as he took another sip of brandy. "Look away from what?" As if on cue, We all heard a gear grinding. Hang on. Heard a grinding coming from the area in front of the casket. The casket began to turn, and as it did, we could see Grandpa as he lay down amidst the velvet swags inside. He was still dead, his arms still crossed over his chest, but the machinery wasn't done quite yet. It tilted the old man, brought him to an upright position, so that we couldn't help but look at him. And then it became clear. Everything was on display, from his wrinkly spotted jowls to his thinning hairline to his puffy eye bags. He was my grandpa, but there was something horrific about seeing him like this. Even at 6, I couldn't properly put it to words, and I still can't. One of my cousins, Jamie, in fact, cried out and turned away, and Mr. Madreau shook his head and made a mark across the list. We're reading Grandpa's Heir if you're just joining us, so pull up a chair. It's just getting good. It appeared that this was the game, and suddenly everyone seemed to know the stakes. You wouldn't have said it was so hard, staring at a man that you loved and admired, but there was something extremely off-putting about looking at my grandfather's corpse. He had never looked that way in life, and it was like looking at a wax dummy or a particularly good piece of grotesque art. Mom had patted my arm and said that if I wanted to look away, I could, but I found that I didn't. It was my grandpa, and even though it was a little scary to look at him like this, I knew that I had to do him this favor. I had to be the last one to look away, not because I wanted his money, but because I didn't want him to look down from wherever he was and think that I'd given up because I didn't love him. I know how silly that sounds, but when you're a kid, these things make perfect sense. As I sat there and stared at my grandpa, I could hear other people turning away. Some of them were crying, others were being sick, and I didn't understand why. Sure, the dead body was scary, but it was just Grandpa. Grandpa had never hurt anybody. Grandpa had helped a lot of us, in fact. I couldn't think of a time when my grandfather had ever... All thoughts slipped out of my head as his eyes slipped open, and I watched his mouth pull up into a grin. Hang on. There it is. If I hadn't known better, I would have thought he was going to speak, but he didn't. He just sat there, looking like he had the punchline to a joke that he would never tell. And soon, it was just me and my mother. I had to stop myself from laughing, right up until his left eye winked. That took my breath away. He'd always winked just like that when he'd see me. It was our special exchange. It made me want to cry. I almost looked away when he... I almost looked away when she started to weep. Almost. But I remembered the rules and kept my eyes firmly glued on my grandpa's body. Why was she crying? I didn't understand why any of them were so upset. But all of a sudden she got up and started running for the exit. And Grandpa's attorney said that I was the inheritor of Grandpa's estate. As he began to clap, the coffin descended back towards the ground, and I was left very confused, but happy as well. I wouldn't understand how lucky I had been, not till the car ride home. Grandpa had left me everything. His house, his cars, his money, all the art, everything. It was all held in trust until I was old enough, of course, and Mr. Madreau said that some of the money would likely go to maintaining my grandfather's palatial estate. Mom seemed happy, but her eyes were still wet-looking. It seemed she was on the verge of crying even now, and Mr. Madreau said that he would be in touch with the rest of the paperwork. There we go. I remember asking Mom why she was crying on the way home, and she said it had been sad to see Grandpa dead. I asked her why the others had been crying, and she said it must have been the same for them as well. I told her they didn't seem sad. They had seemed happy until Grandpa had wanted to play his last game. She kept peeking at me as I talked, turning her head and taking this little... if I could talk. Taking these little looks. And then she asked me a strange question. A question I wasn't sure how to answer. Did he say anything to you? Who? I asked, not sure who she meant. Your grandpa. Did he say anything to you? I almost laughed, thinking she was joking. Of course not, Mommy. Grandpa's dead. Dead people don't talk. She didn't say anything after that, but I could see her peeking at me the whole way home. I think Mom expected there to be some fallout after the funeral, but nobody contested the will. My aunt never talked to me again, but not out of jealousy. My uncle was the same way, and they all seemed afraid of me in some way. Can't talk. And they all seemed afraid of me in some way. I was just a kid, so it never really made any sense. Not until Mom died when I was 21. It was very sudden, stomach cancer that ate her up before she could even get treatment for it. And even my money couldn't save her. By then I'd inherited everything. I was living in Grandpa's old house. I offered the doctor any amount of money if he could save her. I'd have mortgaged the house if it meant my mother would live. But they said there was nothing they could do for her. Sometimes, young man, these things just happen, and there isn't anything that can be done. I remember one night, as she sat there holding my hand, she asked me something she hadn't asked me for, 15 years. My math was off there. In 15 years, something I hadn't thought about in almost that long. Please, I have to know. What did your grandpa say to you on the day of his funeral? I looked at her in disbelief, thinking she must be losing it as she lay there. I told you, Mom, he didn't say anything to me. How could he? He was dead. Dead people don't say anything. She let go of my hand, her own seeming to go limp as she stared at the wall of the hospital room. You got off lucky then. Maybe you really did deserve the inheritance. I asked her what she meant, and she looked at me like she had never seen me before. There was something else in there, though. Something like resolve. I'll tell you, but only once, so you better listen closely. I've wondered the same as you on the night of your... What? Oh, okay. Try that one again. I had wondered, the same as you on the night of your grandpa's funeral. People were losing their minds, running off and being sick, and I didn't understand any of it. I just thought maybe they were being silly, probably because Grandpa had always loved me, just like he loved you. I was sitting there, wondering how long this was going to go on, and then his eyes opened, and he frowned at me. I thought maybe the stitch had just come undone from his mouth, and maybe the spirit gum had come off of his eyes, but then his mouth flopped open, and he started to speak. He told me I didn't deserve it, that he knew I'd only taken care of him all these years because I wanted what he had. I'd never shown it, and I'd never acted out front. Damn. Some of this is word salad. Sorry, guys. I really should have checked this over. Let's see. Okay, let's try that again. Never acted as upfront about it as the other. If I could fucking talk. Never acted as upfront about it as the others. But he still knew. That's why you brought your boy around, so I would see him. You knew that if you wanted any of what I had, you needed to get in my good graces. I love you, Caroline, but you betrayed me in the end. Not as bad as some of the others, but betrayal is betrayal. That was when I got up and left. I got up and ran because he was right. I loved that old man. I loved him with all my heart, but I was greedy too. I let him pay the publishing house so that my first book would get published. I let him talk to people. He knew that they would get me more attention than anyone else for this book. Nope, I'm going to have to change that. That too is word salad. That they would get so that my first I let him. Okay. Give me just a second, guys. I let him talk to people he knew so that it would get more attention than it deserved. I let him help make my career. And then, after all that, I still coveted what he had. I didn't deserve it. I didn't deserve it. But given what your uncle and your aunt told me, I got off light. Hello.
Hello, friend.
Hi. Say hi, everyone.
Hi, everyone.
Okay. I got off light. Ask them if you dare. It makes no difference to me. I won't be here much longer. She died a few hours later. I'm sitting in my grandpa's study now, drinking brandy that is Probably worth more than the house my mother left me in her own will. I can't bring myself to ask my relatives what Grandpa might have said to them when his casket popped itself open and we were made to play such a terrible game. I know a little of it. Grandpa left some notes behind before he died. I know some of my cousins were stealing from him. I know my uncle was also embezzling money from one of the companies that Grandpa left him in charge of. I know my aunts had been taking some of the things my grandma had left behind before she died. But there were other things. Worse things. One of my aunts had actually killed someone one night when she was driving drunk, and Grandpa had covered it up. My uncle's oldest son had gotten a girl pregnant and then beaten her nearly to death, something my uncle had asked my grandfather to smooth over. There are so many little secrets like that in his black book, the book my grandpa left in his desk. Still, the next time one of them asks for money, as they so often do, I may offer them a trade. They may have their money, as long as they tell me the secret of what that old corpse said to them before they left the room crying. And there you go. That is Grandpa's Heir. Hope you liked it. Like I said, I hope it wasn't too out of left field there. Oh yeah, I could have gone way darker. Absolutely, Bev. Ooh, yeah, Lou. I can't imagine seeing something like that at 6. That would definitely mess me up. Anyway, guys, I think that's all for tonight. I hope you guys enjoyed tonight's live stream, and I hope we'll see you again next time. Like I said, we'll see you guys Tuesday, I hope, for the Tuesday morning live stream. But until then, we'll catch you next Saturday. Dr. Plague, signing off. Have a wonderful evening.